Today I'm starting off on the first of the Observerse or geometric unity sort of videos, and I'm going to make that a reaction. So what I've done is just searched for the term Observerse, coined by Eric Weinstein of course, and the first video that shows up is from a year ago. It's got 300 views. We're just going to watch that, talk a little bit about it. Cool. Without further ado, I've no idea what this is about really.
When you have a mustache and you take a drink, it's an event.
He's not wrong! Nice bit of epic music.
I'm back. And it's still hot in my garage, which is why I have been absent, but it is now no longer over 100 in here. It's only getting close to 90. So if I'm sweating, it's almost a sauna. It's not quite a sauna anymore, but it was. But we have to go on because I have too much to talk about. I showed you guys the binary triality sheet in the last lecture. It shows how there is this objective.
Oh fuck, I'm gonna have to watch back this guy's channel now. Sense organs, limbs, brain, fermions, leptons, bosons, force carriers, forces, space-time, matter, chinops, elements of life, sulfur, phosphorus, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon. That's the first I've heard that term. CH-nops. Let's look that up. CHNOPS. Biology. It's a term known in biology. Stands for carbon. Alright, so it's the first letter for each of them. 98% of all living matter on Earth is made up of that. Okay, I understand elements of life now. Fields of study. Engineering, technology, sociology, biology, genealogy, apologies. I wrote down geology earlier. I need to know more about rocks. We've got chemistry and physics in there as well. Next one is sex and gender, nuclear family. Castes of a nation, religion, colors, yep, color mixing, primary and secondary, additive and subtractive, elements of design, solids, phrases and statements, absolute phrases, adverb phrase, language. This is Aristotelian, elements of drama, plot, character, thought, diction, music, spectacle. Apologies if I'm dipping out a scene or something, it's hard to read, these are tiny. Rock, vertebrates, invertebrates, kingdoms of cellular life. This is quite a cool dashboard for diving into ideas and things. Fundamental moods, fundamental equations, mathematical order of operations. Okay, moving on.
Structure that I call the binary triality, that is 6 perspectives in every single aspect of observation. And I believe that this comes from what Eric Weinstein calls the 14-dimensional observerse. This is based on my one conversation with him about it. I had already seen this.
Drinking coffee is an event. Coffee stains on my mathematics and notes for this
structure, and I think that it's what he was describing. If this isn't what he's describing, he can tell me one day and I will set the record straight. But it's very important to understand the proper context for these dimensions in what I think is the observerse. If it's not the Eric's observerse, then this is my
version of it.
Change matrix or observer matrix.
4 and 4 is 8, plus the 6 of what? 6. Sum of intersecting dimensions of the objective observer outside and the subjective observer inside. Subjective observer. Okay, let's start from the top. The 14-dimensional observerse. Sum 4. Is that like SU4? Objective constraint, space. So it's a dimension of space. Degree of... Wait, this is Gavin Wince too. look, you have Gavin Wince talks about past moments, present moments, and possible future moments to do with the passage of time and stuff in his 3D time model. So we got to cover him as well during this series. So it's a minus degree of freedom is a past moment, so that would be beneath 0 on the axis. Subjective constraint would be present moment. Subjective current location. Okay. Degree of freedom, possible future moments. So you could be free into the future. Possible new location. Okay. You've got these 4 sliding past each other. You see space is offset on the right and time is offset on the opposite side. Sorry, space is offset on the left and time is offset on the right. We have descriptions, explanations of the dimensions in this bracket here. And then underneath we have mathematics of the count of dimensions. Give me a moment. I'm going to bring up some notes from the past. I'll show you how similar this is to Gavin. Right. What we have here on some of this card. Is this diagram here. And it's hard to see, so I'll read this out. Oh, it's also it's back to front. There we go. Right, so we have active mass present in the past. Inertial mass is present, self-referencing, like in the moment. Passive mass is present in the future. So this is, he takes like frames of reference from past moments and sort of relates that to mass. Because mass is an object, right? So an object of focus, and it can have location in past or in future or in present. And if you have 2 relative masses, they actually exist in different time references as well because of the gravitational forces between both objects warping the time frame or reference frame. And then they intersect in the middle, which would be the subjective constraint. In fact, they intersect at every point, but then at which point do you want to measure the actual intersection and be that the subjective moment that you're going to have a look at. The second bit here says subjective observer, so that would be observing from one particular point of view would be a subjective point of view. And then say you're over here, you can also have a subjective point of view where you look at it from this side, and red and blue shift should sort of like be different depending on which way it's coming. Maybe we should let this guy explain it. I'm having a total guess at this stuff so far, right?
We'll call it that. So what you can see here is you can see that this top one is the objective observer. And these are the degrees of freedom and constraints that exist for every single observer. And then this is the subjective observer within the objective observer and their degrees of freedom and their constraints. Now, each side of this has an objective constraint and a subjective constraint. And
I want to know what the objective constraint of this particular part of the model is.
Are inside of probably another universe, and
so some Mandelbrot set.
Then that one is inside another universe and another universe, and all of it is inside of God.
So Mandelbrot sets are these sets that are self-similar at scale. So as you zoom into them, you start to realize that the patterns that emerge at the local small scale are very similar to the macro scale that you've just came from or could surmise that would exist. Once you extrapolate the algorithm up and down, you can check that. And graphically it's shown like this.
Then that one is inside another universe and another universe, and all of it is inside of God. All the universes are inside of God. And this structure will tell us the relationship between space and time, and options and limits of you and me, and also all the consciousnesses within you and me. The cells within you and me are the subjective observer, and we're the objective observer. Imagine you are God, and you're a mind, okay? Not a brain, a mind, okay?
So something that's non-material would be the mind. I think that's what he's setting up here. And the objective would be the brain, and the subjective would be the mind.
And within you, you have another mind that you've made. Now, between the two of you is a matrix of interaction, of mathematical interactions that you two can engage in. And they are actually due to our structure being a mirror image of their structure, and their structure being a mirror image of our structure. So when we take time and space into account, and we realize that time and space are not two things, they're one thing. And this is not a new idea, but nobody really easily discusses exactly why what this means. And I'm going to use this model to show you exactly what that means.
Takes a sip of water.
This model shows us where space-time comes from. So space is time, and time is space. They are the medium that is maneuverable by a consciousness in relation to another consciousness. Okay?
This makes sense so far.
Eric has said things like, and I don't want to just keep referencing Eric, but I do believe that this is related to geometric unity, and if it's not, I'll take it back, but this is objectively true if it's not geometric unity, and if geometric unity doesn't include this, geometric unity is not true. That's what I'm saying. I'm that confident. I'm not, trying to bandwagon. If this isn't in geometric unity is not correct. So when we look at the observers, I believe that Eric has made certain analogies to it basically being like two spaces. It's like a basketball game, and there's the court and there is the stands, and that what is happening in each is entangled, but to some degree, but also separate space. And this seems so confusing to people, but it's not confusing to me.
If this is confusing to anyone watching, the analogy goes like this, right? So there's, for any event that happens, say it's a game of basketball, there's moving parts, there's balls, there's the team, there's the court which stays stationary. That's the agreed upon part. The court can't move, right? And all the seats next to the court, they can't move either. So people take their seats, there's people on this side and on that side and behind and in front, right? So you've got, let's keep it simple, you've got a left hand side and a right hand side. The game plays out, there's teammates moving, all in random but ordered fashion, the ball is moving, points are being scored, a foul happens, something happens, right? And one side of the court sees it happen completely plain as day, and the other side of the court doesn't see it happen because maybe the body's involved, we're covering up the action, something like that. We've all witnessed people punching each other on a camera, and the angles make it look like it's real, but it's fake and it's for acting, okay? So angles and perspectives, the point of observation, has a big important role to play here. This happens with particle physics. That's the point of this. If that makes sense. This happens with observational experiments too. Which side or which model you come from will dictate what you get out of your observations, unless you can unify both viewpoints and come to consensus using shared terminology and experimental data.
At all. Imagine you are a mind, and you have a mind within you, and that between you and this other mind is a medium of fluid. Okay, a fluid.
So he's talking about within the head. This game plays out within your own head. That's where he's taking this. He's saying that there must be two forces in the head that observe things differently, maybe more than two, and the differential must be sorted out, consolidated, and sort of made into a decision or judgment. And then people talk about nuance judgments. So when you come to a decision or come to a realization of something that is fact from everything that was on offer to decide from, you may have different interpretations even within your own mind, depending on which viewpoints you're trying to observe it from, in order to work out which path to take into the future, or who to decide goes to jail, or who fouled, who gets... You follow me?
And this fluid is spinning. So basically, imagine that God is a bucket, or the universe is a bucket.
So he's actually talking about the medium between these two things in the brain, these two minds. He's talking about a medium. In order for the two things to communicate, they must communicate through something. That's called a medium. And he's talking about it being some sort of fluid. We talk about things that are mediums tend to be things like fields. Not fields per se, but the things that the field permeates. Another medium would be like water, and you can send sound through water.
And then you are inside the bucket. You're inside the universe. You're inside of God. And inside this bucket, though, is water. It's filled with water. And this water is spinning because the bucket is spinning. And you are stuck inside of this water. And you're just like a little, a guppy. Okay? You're a guppy in a bucket. And the bucket is spinning. And you are in this water. If you're not in the very center, which you're not, then what it appears to you is that time is flowing by you. So people say, well, time flows like a river. It appears like it flows like a river, but it's not actually flowing like a river. It's spinning in a vortex. And
spinning in a vortex does give polarity to things. There's a momentum going one way and not the other way. Therefore, one way of time, I think, is what he's trying to say, right? And we are the fish that sits in the water. We experience time flowing in one direction past us.
You can maneuver as your little guppy inside of this space, but you are constrained by the spin of the fluid of the water because of the spinning of the universe, because it spins faster than you can swim. Okay? And this creates a constraint. You can go one direction, but you can't go another. This is why you can't go backwards in time. And it is because you can't move fast enough to overcome the speed of the spin of space-time, of the universe. You can go to the future. But not only can you go to the future, you will go to the future, because you can't swim against the current fast enough to overcome the spin. So it will eventually move you. Now, you can go forward faster, because you can kind of like when you're catching a wave and you're swimming with the wave, you can swim faster because the wave is pushing you, and you are also like
pushing
you're not
yourself through
fighting
the
it,
medium.
You are using it. You're
using the
you're in
medium
sync with
to
it. This is exactly
accelerate
what happens
yourself.
when you go really, really fast, and time slows down for you, and therefore you went to the future because you can do it, but you cannot go to the past.
Shia LaBeouf.
At least not by using, the laws of the constraints of, relativity. Whether or not you can do it through quantum entanglement and stuff, we gotta think more about that on another episode, because that's a whole episode. But this model is what gives rise to the binary triality, which is these 6 perspectives inside of the interaction between an objective and a subjective consciousness within that objective consciousness. The interaction between the court and the stands, or between the guppy and the bucket. Okay? And imagine that this is a bucket that is actually a conscious being like a guppy. So you can see that it's 4 aspects that define each of these consciousnesses of these beings. These sentient beings are defined by 4 aspects. And these follow a Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey pattern. So Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey pattern is, Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey.
I think this is... No? Hey va hey yud. I think he might have said it backwards. Yud. Yud hey va hey. Maybe it's read backwards.
Which is... It's a spin structure. Okay?
Ooh.
And this is exactly what this is doing. You're spinning. The universe is spinning. You are the universe to your cells, and they're spinning, and they are the universe to the molecules to the DNA within your cells, and that is spinning, and so is an atom within those molecules.
Let's read this out. It says, I missed it. Let's go back. The observerse is a term coined by Eric Weinstein as a label for his new physics model that is part of his larger theory titled Geometric Unity. This is my personal attempt at describing the structure that I see that is a 14-dimensional structure and seems to line up with some of Eric Weinstein's descriptions of the observerse. If I am misrepresenting Eric's intent for the term, I will correct the record in the description of the video, but I stand by the structure described in this video as also being true even if it isn't Eric Weinstein's observerse. Let me move on to slide 2. Instead of the traditional triality of dimensions such as length, width, and height, my model states that we actually have only 2 degrees of freedom, and that the triality of perspectives that we see is due to only 2 degrees of freedom, plus 1 subjective constraint. This is also the 4th perspective generated by an objective constraint that is observed as time. Within the universe and space, from the perspective of the universe itself, the subjective observer in the model is always inside of the objective observer. That's nuts. So we are always objectively constrained even in our subjective observations. I do believe that. Linguistically, a proof would be we are restrained down to the narrow band of light that we see and colours that we see. Even though there must exist something beyond this, we just cannot perceive that as such. Not in the normal sense, we use instrumentation. The subjective observer in the model is always inside the objective observer. I believe this structure is what creates the apparent subjective chirality and objective symmetry of the universe. This model also lines up with my 4 fundamental perspective degrees of freedom: inside, outside, separate, and oneness. That's interesting. Separate and oneness. So it's like the binary explosive forces and implosive forces or things like centripetal versus centripetal force. Those are competing, separating, and the dissolution forces. Interesting stuff. Is there a third? Oh no, this is the final stretch here. Okay. It's quite a cool video. Keeps the whole topic alive. I want to cover some things on it myself, especially from the perspective of Gavin Wince and how I think this relates, and also Theoria Apophasis, or tattooed monkey guy from the internet who makes ferrocells and talks about ancient Greek. He's a pretty interesting character. I would like to do some videos on their stuff. Okay, we'll do a follow-up on this. Catch ya.